Okay, so you know that onions are a vegetable?
Please don't slam the door.
See, for stream.
That I effectively can't get canceled in.
Okay, so it looks like my stream is doing Discord audio, it just can't hear. Okay, I think I fixed it.
I'm still hearing. I'm hearing the echo, but
The echo is because I have my phone up. So let me reopen
oh,
the stream. I think. So, okay.
wonderful.
Testing. And now there's no audio. Yay. Okay. Wonderful. Testing. Oh, there it goes. I just have it going on. And now there's no audio. Yay. Okay. Wonderful. Testing. Oh, there it goes. I just have it going on. Okay, so can I have you guys talk individually? Mac, talk.
Oh, okay.
You guys, individually, Mac.
What?
Tony, you talk.
Hello.
Okay, I think we're good. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Callon. I am the host of your show tonight. And I am also the reason why we are having technological problems, because technology is amazing, isn't it, boys?
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to formally welcome you to the season finale of Welcome to the Nightfall. I am your host, Callon. I am the lead director, lead researcher, all of that for Welcome to the Nightfall. I also host I also host my own show called Callon Stable Contents, which you may have heard the other guests that I have here on the show before. Today I am joined by host of Steel Underground, also the voice of one of the lead characters in the upcoming Satellite sci-fi thriller podcast, Mr. Mac Advertisement. Say hello, Mac.
Howdy do.
I am also joined today by esports owner, Twitch streamer, and all-around my biggest source for anything that has to deal with money and science fiction, Mr. TaZeTheGod. Say hello.
Howdy, everyone.
And last but not least, one of my closest friends. He is a Twitch streamer. He is also a voice in The Satellite. He is also one of my co-writers, Mr. Lance Susek. Say hi.
Good evening.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, again, welcome to the Nightfall. To explain what Welcome to the Nightfall is, it is a true crime / supernatural podcast that I host with my panel of friends here. The last episode that we did was an episode called White House Farm, back, I believe, in June. Before that, me and Taze hosted a pseudo spin-off episode that talk about like Chris Benoit murders that happened in 2000s. So there are a couple episodes in case you want to go back and watch those. They are currently on our YouTube channel, which you are currently watching right now. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to say that today's episode is the season finale of 2022. I'm currently figuring out whether or not I want to revive the show for next year. We'll figure that out. Tonight's episode, before we get into it, I want to do a quick disclaimer that this episode depicts verbal depictions of suicide, self-harm, drug abuse, murder, mental health issues, and a bunch of other trigger phrases and trigger things that could affect you. If you suffer from any of these, please stop watching and seek immediate medical or mental health assistance by calling the National Suicide Hotline by dialing 988. Or seeking assistance from local medical personnel or other official professional sources in your area. Tonight's episode is going to be about dealing with a case that is near and dear to my heart. It's a case that I've been slowly building up facts and theories about over the last decade of my life. About a decade ago, I was first introduced to this individual and the music that he created. If you read a description of the YouTube whatever, you will know that today's case is going to be featuring the story of the life and death of one Kurt Donald Cobain. So, before I get into it, I'm curious to find out who in the panel has heard about the case, what happened, or if they have anything like above surface knowledge regarding this case, because this case really dives deep with some crazy shit. So Lang, since you said, how much about this case do you know off the top of your head?
Bits and pieces. After learning about it years later from my own father, and after being a huge fan of listening to a couple of the songs by the band, because he had a couple albums from them.
if I remember correctly, you were the only member of this entire group who was alive when Kurt died. I mean, you may have been really young still, but not to put an age on you, but...
I would have been really, really young, and I probably would not have known if they didn't say anything.
True, but it still gives you the, this stature saying, hey, you were alive when this happened, you grew up in the 90s after it happened, so you got to see the after effects as you grew up, and then going into early 2000s, because I was born in 97, if I remember correctly. Taze and Mac, you guys were both born after 2000, if I remember correctly.
I was born in
I was born in September of 99.
Okay, so I was 97, Mac's 98, and Taze is 99. Sorry to put ages on all of you guys, but either way. So, Mac, how much about this case do you know?
I pretty much know everything. I pretty much know most details that I need to know.
Okay, so you can probably help me if I screw up a factoid here and there. Alright, so, and what about you, Taze? How much of this case do you know?
Well, I know of who Kurt Cobain is. I know a surface level, but not too much.
Okay, so you're pretty much going to this case brand new. Tony or Lan, sorry, Lan, you have some knowledge, but just not enough. So you guys are basically going to be who I'm going to be telling the story to. Mac, of course, you have pretty much all the knowledge you need, so you can assist me if I get something wrong. Anyways, alright, so now that we've established that each of us has our own structure in this case, I think it's about time we dive into this case. Again, strap yourselves up, because this is going to be one hell of a case, so welcome to the Nightfall! Alright. Kurt Donald Cobain was born on February 20th, 1967. He passed away. He was officially claimed as a suicide on on April 8th. He was found dead in his greenhouse home on April 8th, 1994, though medical toxicology reports and autopsy report claim that he was dead as early as April 5th, 1994. So his body was staying there in that greenhouse for 3 days before it was discovered by anyone. A little bit of background on Kurt Cobain. Kurt was born in Aberdeen, Washington, which is only a handful of miles away from Seattle, Washington. Kurt grew up in a very tumultuous household where he was very hyper. He was the first son of his mother and his father, and at some point during his childhood, his mother decided that he should go live with his father because she could not handle him anymore. So Kurt, before he turned 13, moved in with his father, who had divorced his mother fairly early in his life. Kurt initially was very, at least appeared open to moving in and doing whatever he could with living his life with his father and his stepmother and her 2 sons. But over time, Kurt kind of began being a little bit combative and rebellious towards the family. And to the point that Kurt got kicked out of his father's home, and he had to move in with other people, including his school principal, his grandparents, his friend. And there was even a point where he was staying underneath a bridge in Aberdeen, Washington, basically homeless, before his mom finally took him back in. I can't remember exactly what year it was that he started forming a band that was called Skid Row. which eventually developed into a band called Fecal Matter, which eventually developed into a band called Bliss, which eventually became what we know today as Nirvana. At the time, it was Kurt Cobain with his good friend at the time, Chris Novoselic, who played bass. Kurt was playing the left-handed guitar, and being the main songwriter of the duo. And then the drummer, whose name I cannot remember off the life of me because I forgot to write it down, is somewhere in my head, I just can't think of it. But in 1989, Kurt, Chris, and the drummer dude decided to release an album called Bleach, which was released in 1989 to some moderate success within the Seattle grunge scene. Kurt and Nirvana would go around the United States doing some concerts here and there to promote the Bleach, but more or less opening acts for other bigger bands at the time, such as the Melvins, who were also a Seattle / Aberdeen, Washington pre-grunge rock band. Again, something happened in between those years where their drummer either left or was fired and was replaced by who we all know now as basically the embodiment of rock and roll in today's day and age, Mr. Dave Grohl, who is the current lead singer and guitarist of the Foo Fighters. But back then, he was the drummer for Nirvana, and they penned the worldwide best-selling album Nevermind, which was released in 1991 to insane success. Which, this is where a lot of the problems start. So, in 1994, before Kurt died, actually no. In 1994, Kurt said that for the last 6 years of his life, so from 1988 to 1994, he had a massive undiagnosed stomach issue. One that is still, as far as I can tell, I haven't been able to find any records of it, of what his issue actually was, but it was, but to me, from what I have experienced as someone who lives with depression and anxiety myself, I know that one of the weirdest things that happens with depression and anxiety is this stomach or acid reflux issue. And from what I was able to gather, I believe that the stomach issue was more or less the lining of his stomach wasn't able to prevent the stomach acid from burning his stomach, which is why which is why all of that pretty much happened, why he had a stomach issue. In 94, he said that he finally got the medication to fix it, but because of the stomach issue, Kurt had begun getting drugs or getting recreational drug use in order to kind of assuage the stomach issue, eventually allowing him to go out on stage and performing with the bands. But the stomach issue was also one of his main sources of inspiration when it comes to writing music. So, I mean, if you go back and look at the lyrics for some of those songs that he wrote from 89 to 1994 when they released In Utero, I think it was 94. Actually, it was 93 that they released In Utero, I believe. I don't remember. It was in the 90s. So, if you go back and look at those albums and the lyrics that are contained within, you can kind of see that he is in a lot of physical pain, he's in a lot of emotional pain. Yeah. So, before I continue, I want to say this, that from my research of Kurt, I have come to the realization that I believe Kurt was undiagnosed with a form of autism spectrum disorder, combined with ADHD. The reason I say this is because he was very sensitive to emotion, which is pretty much the same with me. He's very hyperactive as a child, to the point where he was basically he was ADHD. He was carbon copy. He was basically the ideal poster boy of what ADHD is in most people's eyes. He was hyperactive. He would be running around the house. He would be beating his drums. He would be playing his guitar all manic-like, which is why some of the songs on Bleach and Yugoro and Nevermind are all very fast and kind of crazy sounding. Some of them aren't really clear. I know it's the distortion, but that's just how Cobain was. So yeah, that's a lot of the info that I have on Kurt's personal life. Mac, anything you want to add to this, since you have a lot of info, apparently?
Anything I want to add? Actually, I will say I did not actually know he had a stomach issue. I didn't know he had bad acid reflux.
The acid reflux is more my diagnosis, because I know that as a person living with the anxiety and the ADHD and the Asperger's, is that I know that the acid reflux that I receive almost weekly does happen. So I know that when I get acid reflux, it gets bad. But I can't imagine what it was like for him, because he had that stress, he had the anxiety, he was doing the drugs, he was doing all kinds of stuff. He was smoking marijuana, he was doing all kinds of 90s bad hoodoo, or whatever it is. So I can kind of say with some certainty that Kurt was suffering from some form of physical reaction to his anxiety, which we're still learning about today, about how anxiety can affect the physical body, same with depression, and all that. So one thing I want, so a little bit of background on his personality. Kurt had 3 major things that I wanted to point out about his personality. The first is that he hated to be embarrassed. If he felt like he was being embarrassed, he would lash out very hard. So if he got embarrassed by someone, all his emotions would just unlock and he would let them all out. Which I felt bad for him, because I kind of feel how that is. I mean, I get secondhand embarrassment a lot of the time just from watching other people do stupid shit. So I can't imagine what it's like for him. The second thing is that he hated the spotlight of being this apparent rock and roll god who is being worshipped by fans worldwide, or at least he hated what the media portrayed him as. It's like you know how we look at Dave Grohl as like the embodiment of rock and roll now. Well, the media look at Kurt much the same way, and he hated that. Kurt hated being famous. He didn't hate being anywhere near the fans, because he loved the fans, he loved sharing his music with people. The problem was he hated being embarrassed on TV by saying, hey, look, this guy's like he's the bee's knees because he's a top guy in the grunge rock scene in Seattle. He's the reason why all these bands are so popular, like Alice in Chains, Mudhoney, Mother Love Bone, all these other bands. I guarantee you only one of those bands that I mentioned that Taze and maybe Lan know about.
What bands did you say?
I said Alice in Chains, Mudhoney, and Mother Love Bone.
Alice in Chains is the only one I know of.
Okay, so Mother Love Bone eventually became Pearl Jam.
Okay.
Mudhoney, I don't remember what happened to them. I think they eventually became Soundgarden, or at least their members split off to become Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, or maybe Temple of the Dog. I don't remember entirely. Either way.
Okay.
last bit of his personality I do want to mention is that he was a very anti-establishment person. There was a lot of points in some of the documentaries I watched, or some of the videos I watched, of Kurt being very he was very against the idea of, like, how do I describe this? I'm trying to think of a word. He's anti-establishment. He was very pro LGBTQ, apparently. He stated in an interview that if he had not married Courtney, he would be an openly bisexual man. So, it's safe to say that, that Kurt was bisexual. So, he was very openly about that. He hated people laughing at him, unless it was like for a joke or something. That's just how he was. I don't feel like I'm doing a decent enough job describing who Kurt was, primarily because I'm not someone who knew the guy, even though I'm acting like I did, because of my personal connection to maybe his mental health issues. But I digress. So that's basically everything you guys need to know about Kurt. He was a musician. He was very mentally, I wouldn't say unstable, but he was emotionally unstable, I guess I'd probably say. Okay, so following the release of Nevermind, Kurt met and fell in love with lead singer of the grunge metal band Hole, and that singer was Courtney Love, who I'm sure each of us have our own personal opinions of how Courtney Love is. So, that basically ends segment 1 and goes into segment 2, so I will take a moment to let you guys discuss what I've talked about so far. Any questions about Kurt as a person, or what I can try to help elaborate upon?
Nope, I'm good.
Same here. Yeah, I mean,
I'm
like,
good.
it's pretty explanatory.
Okay. And Lan, you said you're good?
Yes, sir.
Alright. Segment 2, where we're going to talk about a little bit about how Courtney entered the picture, what happened because of all the stuff that what happened with Courtney, and all leading up to March of 1994. So, when Kurt met Courtney, they pretty much fell in love immediately. It's very well documented. They documented their own relationship very well. Very explicitly, I may add, because there are visuals of, let's just say that there are very explicit visuals of Kurt and Courtney. Nothing NSFW to an extent, but there are explicit visuals of Courtney completely naked. I'll say this much. So yeah, they filmed their relationship before everything happened. I believe it was right after Nevermind released that they eventually got married. When they got married, they pretty much instantly started going to have a kid. It is important to note that at this point in time, Kurt was heavily using heroin. Same with Courtney. They were both heavily using heroin, to the extent that when Courtney got pregnant, there were rumors flying around that Courtney was still shooting up heroin while pregnant. To the point that tabloids had been releasing articles when their daughter, Frances Bean Cobain, was born in 1993. To the point where police got involved and actually took Frances Bean Cobain away from Kurt and Courtney 2 weeks after she was born, in order to conduct a further investigation into whether or not Kurt and Courtney were still using drugs at the point of either pregnancy or at the point where Kurt and Courtney were still parents, were newly parents. So that is very important to note, because before we get into anything future, I want it to be known that Kurt and Courtney, well, Kurt especially, was a good father to Courtney. I mean, not Courtney, to Francis, because there are lots of visuals and videos that are out there, released videos of Kurt and Francis actually connecting very well together. With Kurt and Francis often playing with each other, not in an SFW way, but more like parent and daughter. It is very well established that Kurt absolutely loved and adored Francis and would do anything to protect her, if anything at all that he could do to protect her. So you can imagine what kind of emotional state he was in following her being taken away after Courtney was allegedly shooting up heroin while pregnant with Francis. So, yeah. After the release of In Utero in 1994, in late 1993, actually, I'm going to look that up just to make sure I'm getting that right.
Sure.
In Utero. 93. It was released in September 21st, 1993, about 6 months before Kurt was found dead. So, after the release of In Utero, Kurt and the rest of Nirvana went on a tour of all kinds of places around the world, specifically around Europe. Around March of 1994, Kurt and Courtney got into a heated argument following Kurt being relocated to Rome following a diagnosis of bronchitis and laryngitis. This was in early March of 1994, and Kurt was found by Courtney in his hotel room in what is considered a drug coma. It was found that Kurt had ingested a cocktail of champagne mixed with the drug called Rohypnol. Let me help you out with that, so I can give you a better idea. Okay, so Rohypnol is a drug that is normally used to treat severe insomnia, as well as anesthesia. Assist with anesthesia, allowing basically making it easier for someone to fall asleep, especially if they're having a lot of physical pain or a lot of mental pain, anxiety, depression. Believe me, I understand this so much. Eventually, Rohypnol was the reason why Rohypnol is so popular or infamous nowadays is because it is considered the highest known 8 rape drug, also known as a roofie. So basically, Rohypnol was essentially a roofie. Kurt basically got roofied and nearly overdosed because of it. He was found in a drug coma. They took him to Rome, where he was treated. And yeah. Let me keep going through this. I want to make it known right now that at no point before Kurt's passing was this ever considered a suicide attempt. From early March 1994 to early April 1994, this was not publicly considered a suicide attempt. It was an accident that Kurt drank too much Rohypnol with champagne and just didn't work out, and he got drugged and he got put into a coma. So that's that. Let's see. On March 18th, 1994, Courtney called the Seattle Police Department, saying that Kurt Cobain locked himself in a bathroom with a gun. When they arrived, they confiscated all of Cobain's weapons, as well as a bottle of undisclosed pills, which are probably Rohypnol pills, if I have to be honest. Not too long after that, Courtney put Cobain through an intervention where his bandmates, some of his friends, and some of the record producers that he was working with all went in and tried to help him with his intervention, which he reacted very negatively to, likely due to his hatred of self-perceived embarrassment. But later that day, he came out of the room and agreed to check himself into a facility in Northern California. On March 30th, 1994, Kurt and good friend Dylan Carlson purchased a shotgun. I have the specifics on the shotgun here. Okay, it was a Remington Model 2 20-gauge shotgun, which is anywhere from 34 to 50 inches long. He purchased it on March 30th, 1994. And again, but it was put in Dylan Carlson's name because Kurt did not want the shotgun to be put under his name, otherwise the police would have come and confiscated it. His reasoning for purchasing the gun was because someone had recently broken into their home not long before this happened, and Kurt wanted to have a gun on standby in case he needed to protect himself, Francis, and Courtney. Cobain entered the facility, the detox program, on March 31st, the day after. He spent the day basically with Francis being Cobain, as well as talking to some of the therapists there in order to figure out a good treatment plan. On late that night, while smoking a cigarette, Cobain chose to scale a 6-foot wall outside of the facility, and he escaped. He went missing. Later that night, Cobain bought a ticket onto a Delta Airlines flight. Mac, I think you'll like this. The flight that Kurt was on also had Duff McKagan of Guns N' Roses was also on the flight. So Duff McKagan was one of the last people to see Kurt Cobain alive.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is made even more interesting because Duff McKagan, because Kurt Cobain had a long-standing hatred of Guns N' Roses. Then again, most rock bands nowadays, back then did. I mean, I'm sure Metallica, if I remember correctly, Metallica has a long-standing rivalry with Guns N' Roses as well because of Axl Rose.
Lars despises Axl. Just need to mention that.
I don't blame him. From what I've heard about Axl Rose, he gives a dick. So that's beside the point. Alright, and we'll get into that maybe a little bit later. But yes, Cobain left the facility in Los Angeles, and he was on a Delta Airlines flight, which had Duff McKagan on the flight as well. They talked a little bit, and McKagan later stated that he felt like something was wrong, but he didn't know what to do, so he's just like, okay, well, get better, okay? So it's like, Duff McKagan had one of those opportunities that could have stopped the suicide from happening, but didn't. Because, well, honestly, you never know with these things until it happens. Cobain was spotted in Seattle, Washington on April 2nd and April 3rd, and no one in his family knew or had ever received any contact from Kurt upon his arrival back in Seattle. However, he had a close friend who is currently staying in his house with who is currently staying in his house at the time because he was a live-in nanny for Francis Bean Cobain. That friend's name is Michael Kelly DeWitt, who is also believed to be the last person to see Cobain live. Alright, so April 3rd, Cobain was last seen. 2 days later, it is speculated that Cobain shot himself in the greenhouse of his Lake Washington home by putting a 20-gauge shotgun in his mouth and firing up into his head. 2 days later, his body was found by an electrician named Gary Smith, who called police, and police were on the scene. And basically, it was immediately declared that Kurt was a suicide. So, that's basically game over for Kurt. Mac, do you have any details you want to add?
Is that the entire explanation? Is there more to go over?
There is more to go over, but I will save that for the investigation. I just wanted to give okay, so this is what what we know for a fact where Kurt was during these days leading up to his death. Do you have any information you want to add about Kurt specifically before we get into theories or get into the investigation?
Not really. I just need you to remind me what the name of that shotgun was.
Remington
It was
Model 2.
Remington Model 2 20-gauge shotgun.
2.
It's a high-powered shotgun.
Gauge.
20
gauge isn't really that powerful. Not sure if anyone here knows this really, but the higher the gauge number, the smaller the pellet. So 20 gauge isn't all that powerful. Wait, what the fuck? Nope. Okay, there we go.
But 20 gauge shotguns usually have longer barrels, right?
Oh, well, no, not.
Yes and no.
They have the same standard length of any shotgun. The thing with 20 gauge is when you get to a certain distance, the pellets just they lose all their power. All right, you're basically just getting pelted with metal BBs at that point. But at close range, like any other gauge, yeah, it's gonna fuck someone up. It's going to molt skin.
It's pretty much stated that Kurt's body, when it was found, a lot of the media sources were saying that it was a lot of blood around him. But in actual reality, there really wasn't that much damage. I mean, it was enough to kill him, obviously, but basically speaking, he was still relatively recognizable, just because of the way the shotgun did. But I digress. Any questions from the Peanut Gallery right now? I know Tony's currently in the bathroom, so Taze, you got any questions before we get into anything actually heavy?
Nah, not that I can think of.
Mac, you got anything you want to add?
Nothing.
Tony, are you back?
Nope.
He's always been acting up, so we'll give him a couple minutes.
Hey, Remington 20 gauge, box of 20 gauge is 16 to 19 bucks.
That's cheap.
I'm trying to see how many shells.
How much did it cost you back in '94? Can you look that up?
What the fuck? Oh, these are AccuTip 260 grain bonded Sabo slugs. These aren't even actual pellets. These are slugs. Jesus Christ.
Good God.
No wonder it's so expensive. I was sitting here like, why the fuck is 20 gauge so expensive? I know ammo prices are bad, but Jesus.
How much were they back in '94?
That's what I'm looking up right now. Calm your horses.
Alright.
It'll certainly be hard to tell.
I need to stop reading Shotgun as Shogun.
You need to stop watching anime.
I don't watch anime. That's the funny thing.
I can't find a specific number.
Well, I don't think it's really relatively important to the case that we find out. I was just... Alright, so... Tony, are you back yet?
Yes, I am.
Alright, how much do you, how much did you hear before you left to work the bathroom?
You guys were just getting ready to start talking about the shotgun.
Okay, so you didn't really miss much. Again, this shotgun is a Remington Model 2 20-gauge shotgun. According to Mac, those the shells used were slugs, so you can imagine
the rounds he didn't use were slugs. I was looking at I just happened to find, and yeah, I wasn't saying anything about the ammo, like the shotgun type he used. No, it's just I just happened to come across a website that was selling slugs.
Okay. Anyways, now we're gonna get into the investigation regarding Kurt's passing. We're gonna start before he died, because there's some very interesting info that we need to touch on here. On April 3rd, 1994, Courtney Love hired private investigator Tom Grant, to find her missing husband. Also, around that point, Courtney, actually no, not Courtney, Kurt's mother filed a missing persons report listing him as suicidal, which was posthumously found out to be Courtney just doing it in his mother's name for no good reason. From what I could find, it was just basically Courtney being Courtney.
Of course.
So Tom Grant did a lot of investigating in regards to trying to find Kurt, but Courtney kept giving him information that was contradictory to what he was supposed to be doing. For example, she did not want him to go up to Seattle for 2 days. Note that he was hired on April 3rd, and he wasn't allowed to go up to Seattle until April 5th. The day that Kurt died. So, yeah. So, Courtney also knew for a fact that Kurt was in Seattle, because Michael Kelly DeWitt, the person I mentioned who was staying in his house at the time, had called Courtney to let her know that Kurt was there. But Kelly called Courtney on April 2nd, so Courtney knew Kurt was in Seattle, but still hired Tom Grant anyway, so that's not suspicious at all, I don't think. So, Tom Grant and Dylan Carlson, the same individual who bought Kurt the shotgun, the Remington Model 2, were in Seattle and had entered the Lake Washington house where Kurt's body was ultimately found on April 6th and 7th looking for Kurt. They could not find Kurt or the shotgun, and Tom Grant was pretty much told Tom Grant said that he had no knowledge of the greenhouse that Kurt was found in was on the premises. Dylan Carlson hid the greenhouse from Tom Grant for a very specific reason, which I will get into a little bit later, but we'll get into that. Again, Cobain's body was found on April 8th in the house's greenhouse with a bunch of needles of heroin and the shotgun. Cobain's head wasn't as mangled as the shotgun would have done. The shell, and last but not least, the shell was on the wrong side of the body from the way the gun was positioned. So let me kind of describe this picture. Again, audience, I want you about to get into is a very graphic description of what, of basically what was happening with Cobain, how they found him. So basically, the first bit of information you need to know is that when you're going to commit the act of suicide using a shotgun such as this, logically speaking, you would have the shotgun pointed down with the barrel inside your mouth, with the trigger pointing down so you can reach out with your thumb, pull the trigger, and all that goes. Cobain was found with the shotgun flipped upside down, so the trigger was pointing up. The shotgun shell was found on Kurt's left side of his body.
Instead of the right.
Instead of the right, where the shell would have been expended. Which, with the way the shotgun was oriented, would have made sense, because if the shotgun was oriented upside down, then the shell would have expended to its left. But the logic is that Kurt could not physically reach the trigger of the shotgun if it was upside down and in his mouth, because the shotgun was just that too long for him to be able to do that. Which is one of the first discrepancies when it comes to the crime scene. The second biggest discrepancy I think that you guys should know is that the toxicology report that Kurt was found with, that was found inside Kurt's body, was 3 times the lethal amount of heroin in his body before he died. Now, to kind of give you an idea of this, when you're doing an intravenous injection of heroin, it takes seconds before it starts to take effect. Mere seconds. Now, he did 3 needles of this into his arm, which would basically knock him out, overdose, and kill him very quickly. The problem was, how would he have been able to inject himself with the heroin and immediately use the shotgun to kill himself if he wouldn't have had the physical faculty to be able to do that with the shotgun, you know? You guys getting it so far?
Yeah.
So, basically, Kurt was found with a lot of kind of red flags, but here's the problem. The Seattle Police Department chose not to investigate this and considered it a open and shut suicide case. It was a depressed junkie who put a gun in his mouth and fired up, which is pretty much a perfect crime. Whatever. Anyways, following Kurt's death, Love revealed that she filed the missing persons report in his mother's name. So here's a little bit more about the police that you guys should probably know. Kurt's body was cremated 6 days following his death. As in, he was cremated on, April 11th.
Okay.
His body was not found until April 8th, which was 3 days after his body was down. So the police only had his body in their custody for 3 days, which is not long enough for a successful autopsy to examine evidence, unless they were going through it as a suicide. I want to also point out that on the day that Kurt's body was found, Tom Grant had approached, Tom Grant and Dylan Carlson were leaving Seattle to go to another location that Kurt could have been at when they learned that Kurt was found dead in the house, returned, and when Tom Grant went to the chief of police at the time and said, "Hey, I have information that could be beneficial to you in this case. and they denied him access to talk to them for 3 days. And so Tom Grant had information regarding Kurt, what he had. So, yeah.
Okay.
Basically saying Kurt had, basically saying that the police were at this point very convinced that it was a suicide attempt and chose not to investigate further into the possibility that he was murdered and staged to look like a suicide. Despite evidence not lining up. They miswrote things about the crime scene. For example, in one of the police reports, it's noted that there was a stool that made it appear that Kurt had barricaded himself in the greenhouse, when in actuality, the stool was on the other side of the room. So they fabricated evident parts of the crime scene. They took a whole bunch of pictures. Some of the pictures you can find online. I will say that there isn't any pictures of Kurt's face, so if you do go looking up, you can see just basically the position where he died, what he was wearing. You can see a very distinct lack of blood and lack of it just wasn't a mess of a crime scene. It was a dead body. So, alright, let me go further. Yeah, so the police allowed for Cobain's cremation 6 days after he was found. So basically, after he died. The fingerprints on the shotgun were not examined until literally a month later. In which the fingerprints were, when they found the fingerprints, they found 4 distinct fingerprints that were unable to be identified. So there was other fingerprints on the gun besides Kurt's that weren't able to be identified because of the time. I'm not entirely sure why they weren't able to be identified. It was just a time period, I guess, between when the shotgun was found and when when they were examined with the fingerprints.
Sure.
So that's something you guys should know. The police are doing shoddy police work, detective work with this. Okay.
Sure.
The toxicology allegedly stated that Cobain had 3 times the lethal amount of heroin in his system, enough to prevent any motor functions that would allow for Cobain to commit the act of suicide, which I mentioned earlier. There are evidence photos from the crime scene that the Seattle Police Department have not developed yet after almost 30 years of his following his passing, and they refuse to release any other images of the crime scene for other investigators to look at. It's pretty much like, hey, this was a suicide case. Believe us, we know what we're doing. No, you can't see our you can't see our homework. You know.
Sure.
So now we're gonna get into some of what was going on with Courtney at this time. Not long after Kurt's body was found, like maybe a week or so later, Tom Grant was talking with I can't remember. I think it was Mary Carroll or whatever. I'm not.
That's certainly the name. Yep.
Sorry?
That's certainly the name or something close to it. Yep.
Right. So Mary Carroll, who pretty much told Tom that she had no belief whatsoever that Kurt was suicidal. To the point that she was assisting Tom with his investigation. It's important to note that Mary Carroll, or whatever, actually, let me look up her name so I know I'm actually saying it right. Because I don't want to give any misinformation here, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see. Second bleach. Synopsis. Okay. I'm looking it up. Courtney, okay. Alright, I apologize for this, guys. I'm working on it. It's not very...
You got this, Captain Rogers.
Oh, shut up. Hypno... Okay. Mike Sisinski... Okay, I can't find her name, but I'm gonna say Mary Carroll at this point, just because it's close enough to the game. Okay, so Mary Carroll had brought out a backpack, or at least a container that Courtney had left at her house previously. It is important to note that Mary Carroll was also not only just a friend to Courtney and Kurt, but also their attorney. So Mary pretty much told Tom Grant that that prior to Cobain's last show in Italy, he had called Carol to have Courtney's name stricken from his will. Because it turns out Kurt was going to divorce Courtney.
Okay.
There isn't very much information at this time about what his reasons for it were, but Courtney did go on record while in the 2015 documentary Montage of Heck, where she stated that she had at one point considered cheating on Kurt with another person, but she had never gone through with it. But Kurt still found out, and she claims that the reason why Kurt did the Rohypnol overdose was because was his reaction to finding out that she was going to cheat on him, which is very highly disputed, but it's also what she says. It's her word against literally everyone else's, and she pretty much knew him the best at that time, so it's hard to say. Courtney and Kurt had a prenup agreement that was in the process of a divorce. Kurt had accepted to have Courtney stricken from his will, but his death happened before it could be finalized. This happened before his final performance with Nirvana. Alright. So I've already talked about that. Shell was found right side body, 4 leg prints were found, okay. So a little bit more info about Courtney thing is that she clearly had motive, because if Kurt had died after she was stricken from his will, Courtney would have gotten a fraction of the settlement she got, because she was still married to Kurt when he died. She got half of his estate, which nowadays is over $1 billion. So basically, she got way more money than Kurt had wanted, and then when Kurt died, she got the money. So she clearly had motive for why she would be involved with Kurt's death in any capacity. However, Courtney had an alibi. She was arrested, I believe, in Los Angeles, and was in jail at his alleged time of death. I didn't find why she was fired, or why she was in jail, but from what I've been able to gather, she was just basically being a public nuisance, and she was in jail for the night. Probably doing some, drug-related thing, or probably doing something with Hole or whatever, just to kind of give her an alibi for why she wasn't there when he died. So, now we have to find out. Now we're gonna have to figure out if Kurt did not kill himself. Who did? Right now, I have 3 possible culprits. The first is circumstantial because it is Michael Kelly DeWitt, who is believed to be the last person to have seen Cobain alive, because he was staying in the Cobain in Seattle house when Cobain returned. He informed Courtney on April 2nd, who neglected to inform Tom Grant. So basically, it's circumstantial because he was the last person to see Kurt alive. They were in the same house around the time of his death, so on and so forth. But no real further evidence has been found to implicate him any further in the issue. Basically, implicate him any further. The second is Dylan Carlson, who was a junkie. He was straight up a heroin junkie. It is speculated that the reason why Dylan Carlson and Kurt Cobain were friends was because Kurt was his supplier of heroin. And when Kurt and Courtney started to use this leverage against Dylan, who subsequently killed Cobain with the shotgun, staging it to look like a suicide. And the reason why I say Dylan Carlson is my personal top suspect for the reason for killing Cobain is because Carlson was with Tom Grant when they entered the greenhouse, or when they entered the Lake Washington house, who hid the existence of the greenhouse from Tom Grant, the private investigator. It is also worth noting that following Kurt's death, Courtney had Carlson wrapped around her finger, to the point where when Tom Grant had gone to interview Carlson following everything during his investigation, he would not do anything unless Courtney approved it. Basically, Courtney was his new supplier, so she would do anything. So he would do anything she asked him to do, so he can get the drugs. The final suspect is an unnamed suspect that is theorized to have been the killer, by Eldon L. Deuce Hoke, the band leader of the band The Mentors, who claimed Courtney Love offered him $50,000 to kill Cobain. Hoke declined the offer, but claimed to know who killed him. However, Hoke was killed by a train before he could say any more. So this is very highly disputed. A lot of people don't believe him, believe what happened. Just highly coincidental that he died right after saying that he may or may not know who actually killed Cobain. It said that he basically was going for publicity, so here's that. One thing I haven't mentioned right now is one major piece of evidence that was in the greenhouse when Cobain was found, and that was his suicide note. I'm going to take a picture of the suicide note and I'm going to send it to you guys, because the suicide note is very weird.
Okay.
One moment. You'll be able to see exactly how weird it is.
Okay.
It's blatantly obvious what well, why it's weird.
Okay.
Alright, so I'm going to save this image and I'm just sending it to the group chat. Alright, so boom, sent. So obviously, listeners aren't gonna be able to look at this unless they look. But I have sent the image to all you guys, so you guys can look at the suicide note itself. What is the first glaring issue you see with the suicide note?
It's kind of illegible. I can't really make out half of it.
It's not that it's illegible. I mean, if you reading up a Kurt's notes and everything, you can understand. Taze, what do you see? What's wrong with this?
I'm pulling it up. Where did you put it?
Nightfall General.
Okay, give me one. Okay, I see. Give me 1 second here. Certainly, definitely, illegible, sort of rambling a lot, incoherent in a lot of ways. Certainly, that's what I see.
Okay, what about you, Tony? What do you see?
Give me a second. I'm just pulling it up right now. Okay. Well, aside from what they brought up, there's also clearly edits that possibly could have pointed out what was really going on aside from just, the base stuff that is in the letter for the note,
Alright, so... yeah. Alright, so let me explain why this letter is strange to me. Note how the bottom of the letter is very different from the majority of the letter. If you actually went in and read the transcript of the letter, you would see a noticeable change between the main body of the letter, which is basically Kurt saying, I don't want to live this life anymore, but not once mentioning he's wanting to kill himself, which is very strange for a suicide note. Basically, it's Kurt writing a letter that was kind of, it's currently speculating that the top part of the letter was written as Cobain's, Cobain writing as a divorce letter saying, hey, Courtney, at the time, Courtney had only speculated that he was getting a divorce with her, but, and she had no idea. Which is, so Cobain had written this letter in order to explain why he was getting a divorce with her. And then right down there at the very bottom of the letter, you see the biggest glaring change in the handwriting style, and how the bottom of the letter basically is your typical suicide note. Like, it says, please keep going on, Courtney, or Francis, or her life which will be so much happier without me. I love you, I love you. So, you can see the big change. That last little bit of the suicide note is your typical suicide note. If you look at any of them, it's basically you're saying, your life will be much better without me, I'm going to be gone, you'll be better, I want you guys to keep going on. Your typical
also, the
suicide
handwriting
note.
is different too.
Exactly. So, now I can go into this little tidbit. Remember when I mentioned earlier that Mary Carroll had turned over a bag that had belonged to Courtney?
Mm-hmm.
In that bag was a piece of paper that looked like she was copying someone's handwriting. And there goes the bomb. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's currently speculating that Courtney had hired someone to. Right now, personally, my personal belief is that Courtney Love hired Dylan Carlson to kill Kurt Cobain using the shotgun that Carlson had bought, which would make it easy. If the shotgun was investigating for fingerprints, it wouldn't be out of the blue just saying that, hey, Carlson handled the shotgun because he's the one who bought it, you know. I also believe that Courtney had Carlson plant the suicide note. I believe that what happened was Kurt had shot himself up with heroin at least a little bit on April 5th, and while he was under the influence of heroin, Dylan Carlson came in, shot him up a little bit more, waiting for him to die because of it. And then, right as he died, he shot him with the shotgun. Thus making it, basically making it appear as though Kurt had killed himself, but in reality, it was Carlson. Which is why Carlson was much more obedient to Courtney Love than anyone else. That's just my theory about what happened. Is I do not believe Kurt Cobain committed suicide, but that's just how I feel. Let's see. I want to also mention that Courtney's own father claims that she had a motive to kill him. But the common consensus remains that Cobain killed himself. Seattle Police Department refuses to reopen the case, despite getting almost weekly requests from people around the world to reopen the case. They are steadfast in their belief that Cobain killed himself, and Cobain's family has asked to move on by not being constantly reminded by the controversy, officially accepting the suicide theory as factual so they can move on from what happened. So that's basically the end of the case, and now I'm gonna open it up to you guys to discuss the remainder of the case.
Well, I also kind of want to point out this type of deal. Back then, and even to this day, most police didn't really care about junkies, which is why they basically aren't going to try to go and, open it up and try to be like, you know what, hey.
I mean, this is Kurt Cobain, this is Kurt Cobain, one of, if not the most famous rock star in the world at that point. He was big in Cowboys. He was married to Courtney Love, who herself was a pretty big rock star.
Even still, once you are known for taking drugs, then you're considered nothing but a lowlife, nothing but scum to the police because you do drugs. Because the whole, I believe it was the Reagan administration with the
war
whole
on drugs,
war on drugs. That was still, it hadn't gone away. It was still going, which is why even back in the early 90s, there was still those advertisements on TV going saying, hey, this is what drugs do to you. This is how you do it. You avoid this at all costs. And if you need help, seek some help. But this is what will happen to you if you're on drugs. And they had the whole just say no stuff. And that's why most police were just like, you know what, this is still considered under Reagan administration, even though, Reagan's been out of the office for years. Presidents afterwards were still going and trying to have the whole war on drugs thing, which is why most police never gave a fuck.
Right.
Yeah.
Mac, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, actually, I need to go over the details about the shotgun you listed, because looking for a Remington Model 2 in 20 gauge, I couldn't find a damn thing, so I thought that was a little strange. I went ahead and searched what shotgun did Kurt Cobain use on himself, and it brought up a Remington Model, Remington Model 11 20 gauge, or the Remington 1187 Sportsman. So, I'm looking over the details for the shotgun, alright?
Right.
Alright. So gauge, it's a 20 gauge. We knew that. Chamber inch is 3 inches. Now here's the fucky part. Here is where it gets interesting. Barrel length is 28 inches. The barrel just by itself. The overall length of the shotgun is 48 inches. The weight is 7 pounds and a quarter. 7.25 pounds. All right, and it takes around that for a successful trigger pull. You need about the weapon's weight for a successful trigger pull. So
Which you probably wouldn't be able to do with your thumb reaching all the way out with your arm completely extended, right?
No, you're not really able, even for a guy like Kurt Cobain, if he's long enough, he's not really going to be able to get a successful trigger pull with just his thumb at that length if he can't really get his entire body weight behind that pull, especially if he's on so much heroin. It's hard to really get that much weight to pull the trigger and successfully fire off a round.
I also want to say that Kurt Cobain was 5'9", which is only 1 inch taller than me. And Tony, you think how tall I am.
Yeah.
And I want to point out that the shotgun that he used that he's mentioning is 4 feet long. 48 inches, right? 4 feet long. Mm-hmm. So that would come up to from his foot to his shoulder. That's how big the gun was.
Yeah, and it's speculated that in order for him to successfully pull off a suicide with a shotgun this length, he would have had to use his toe. So assuming he's able to actually get enough weight behind it, there is still a good chance that him using his foot and him hopped up on that much heroin, he's not really going to be able to accurately get the shot off.
No.
Not before the heroin takes over. Not before the heroin would take over his mind.
And it takes a really short time for heroin to kick in.
Exactly, like literally a snap of a finger. That's how fast it would take.
So I'm looking over the diagrams for the shotgun. I'm looking over pictures and such, and I know that the ejector port is on the right side, like most firearms are. And it's not really ambidextrous because there's not a second ejector port on the left side. You can't switch it.
Exactly.
So, if he were to have the shotgun upside down, that would mean that the ejector port would still be falling, or the ejector port would still be pointed to his right. But assuming that it's actually straight up, like pointed straight like it's supposed to be, the ejector port would be to his left.
I want to also point out. I want to take one moment. Hold on one moment, Joey. I want to point out something that was brought up in one of the documentaries I watched. Is that the police, a police investigator said that they believe that the gun was upside down, but when it was fired, it twisted completely 180 degrees. So it went from facing down to facing up in his hand, which is impossible because when a person dies, their ligaments clench up, their muscles clench up, which would have locked the shotgun in place, preventing it from twisting around in his hand.
No,
so
there's no way.
Yeah, it's complete bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
What were you gonna say, Tony?
Well, I was gonna bring up the fact that if he did go and shoot himself, they're probably gonna bring up the fact that if anything, with the weight of how the shotgun is, it would have gone and rolled over to being face up, which would basically counteract with the whole, limbs freezing up and basically being stuck in that position, still being face up and not rocking around.
Except for the fact
what you just said.
Except for the fact that the shotgun, that muzzle shotgun, from what I've been able to gather, does not flip over or twist over when it's being fired, even limply. Mac, you're basically our firearms expert here. Do you have anything to add with that? Am I spouting bullshit?
So, repeat what you said again, because I'm kind of typing something in, trying to look up something. Go ahead.
Okay, so from what I was able to gather was that the shotgun model that you mentioned, when it's fired, there is no motion like a shotgun makes that will make it flip upside down. Does that sound about right to you?
There is nothing that makes a gun upside down.
Yeah,
No.
make it flip,
flip back
when
to
it's
normal.
fired. No, not make it flip back normal. Make it flip from the standard position upside down after it's fired.
I'm trying to think because again, it's 20 gauge. And it's
Which means it's
it's
still a relatively weak cartridge compared to like a 12 gauge.
Oh, even still, talking about the center of gravity for that gun, even if it was upside down.
If anything, I would imagine like a shotgun would fly backwards instead of flip upside down, horizontally. It would flip upside down vertically. Like it would fire into his head and then buck backwards. You know.
Yeah, the force of the like explosion that's coming out of the barrel from the muzzle, it would force the gun back. But like you said, when you die, your tendons clench up. So upon immediate death, if his tendons actually clench up that tight, then there's no way that the gun would be able to leave his grip.
Not without
Also-
someone actually doing it for him.
There would have been a possibility that even when he pulled the trigger and it kicked back, it would have possibly busted. If he managed to get it with his hands and use it with his hands instead of how some people say that he used his toe, it would have still busted one of his fingers. Whether or not he used his thumb or not, it would have busted one of those because of the force of the kickback. Because of incorrect holding. So not only would he have gone and locked it in place, but one of his fingers would have been broken.
Exactly, and if I remember correctly, none of the autopsy reports claim that his finger was anywhere mangled.
Alright. I am currently looking up statistics for firearm-related suicides from the 90s to, what does this say, 2021. It's showing most firearm-related suicides are done by handguns. It doesn't make sense for him to go out with a shotgun. Not to mention, a lot of suicides anyways, are done by hanging. So, why would you, I'm sure if he was really in the mindset of such a thing, he could have used a bedsheet or something. But why would you use a shotgun to commit suicide?
Okay.
If anything, I would imagine Kurt would have used the heroin to commit suicide rather than
exactly.
Because again, he was found with 3 times the lethal amount of heroin in his system. So. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
I just wanted to bring this up. And yes, it's a work of fiction, so it wouldn't make sense to be accurate. But there is a storyline in one of Marvel's Spider-Man comics where towards the end of after Kraven the Hunter, quote unquote, kills Peter Parker and takes over as Spider-Man, when he comes back, he commits suicide with one of his hunting rifles, which is a shorter rifle compared to a shotgun. And yet, even in that, they point out that it almost would have been impossible for him to go and kill himself, but he was a hunter. So he would have been able to go and, kill himself perfectly fine without having the damage of that. But that still would be impossible in real life. And the only way he'd be able to do that is if he was bigger than the gun itself to allow him to do that. If Kurt Cobain was actually, big enough to go and do that.
I mean,
So-
it's not to say that the shotgun wouldn't do considerable damage, but it did, obviously, because that was the cause of death. But the fact of the matter is that this is 20 gauge. Like Max said, if it's not lethal at insane range, so I guess that's more or less a point towards the suicide theory because because I mean, why would he purchase a shotgun with that short of a range? Like,
Exactly.
I mean, Mac, am I correct in saying that 20 gauge is more for like a close quarters rather than like close to
20
mid quarters?
No, well, the thing is, 20 gauge isn't really that effective for home defense. It's more so just for skeet shooting. Here, if you really want an in-depth explanation on like 20 versus 12, I've got a video by Caranthum that I can actually link. But just for the long short of it, 20 gauge, it's a close range shell. 12 gauge is close to medium. 12 gauge is better suited for home defense, whereas 20 gauge is just more so for, skeet shooting and target practice and all that. Now, that being said, 20 gauge is weaker compared to 12 gauge, but you can still die to 20 gauge buckshot.
Yeah.
That is, like, I am not here saying that 20 gauge is not at all lethal. It is very lethal.
I'm not saying
if you
I'm not saying it's not lethal. I'm just saying what's the point of him buying the gun for like a home defense when the gun isn't made for home defense?
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
Wait, hold on. I got an idea. I got to think. Because Dylan Carlson was with him. Maybe Dylan suggested the gun and gave him false information so he would buy the gun. This is Dylan Carlson. Like I said, he's my primary suspect for who may have killed Cobain. Because I mean, he just has a lot of it's very circumstantial, but to me it seems like Dylan Carlson was was at least in part in accomplishing his death. So, Dylan Carlson could have maybe suggested the gun to Cobain as a home defense weapon. That's the reason why he was there to begin with. But, I mean, I digress. It's a little hard to think about because we're not Dylan Carlson and we're definitely not Kurt Cobain here. But if you ask me, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't understand why Kurt would purchase a weapon like that. I mean, it definitely gives the idea that Kurt did it more for the suicide pact rather than home defense, but with everything else that happened with what's happened with this investigation, it's kind of hard to say definitively if this was his actual choice. You know?
Hard to say.
But that's basically what I got. Matt, do you have anything else you want to add about the case? Anything that you want to bring up? I know I glossed over quite a few facts. I just wrote down what I can fit under 2 hours. But since you know some about the case, I want to see what you think.
Yeah. Real quick, fuck Courtney Love, bitch, and check on your buddies. Check on people you know. Make sure they're all right. Just
definitely.
One conversation could save a life.
Exactly. Again, I should also reiterate right now that if any mental health issues in regards to suicidal thoughts or depression, anxiety, all of that, there are resources there to help you. Please reach out to the National Suicide Hotline for any assistance that you may need, which is just dial 988 on your phone, and you'll be connected with a professional who is here to help you. Same thing goes with other. I don't know what the other hotlines are for other mental health issues. But if you need the help, please reach out to someone. Life is much better with you in life, and we promise it gets better if you just need to have a little bit more faith. So that's the end of that. Taze, you've been really quiet as of late. I want to hear what you want to say. What you want to think? What you think about the case?
So here's what I genuinely think. There's a couple things that stick out to me. And first, I don't want to speak ill of the dead. Because shit. I myself have gone through mental health issues a lot, and I've gone through these
Same.
I have gone through these same thoughts and scenarios in my head too many times. So that's where I've been processing a lot of this, trying to say, like, if I was in this situation, like, could I see myself? And obviously I don't want to speak for others, but could I see myself doing that, right? And what I have sort of surmised is 3 options. And so the first one is that he did commit suicide, as the story says, and everything is just of chance, and that's just, I'm leaving that on the table to be respectful of Kurt. The second one is, I do think there's a high probable chance that Courtney did kill him or had him killed. Because, obviously she had enough to gain, potentially.
She had a motive.
Yeah, she had the motive. She had, like, a lot to gain from
his death, yeah.
By killing him. And then the other option, or the other thing, as well as the option that I think is entirely plausible, is that neither happened, and this person who allegedly, like, wanted to break in, or that Kurt was fearful of, did break in, and there could have been some kind of struggle, which then the person got a hold of the gun and either said, I kill you, or you make it look like a suicide.
One thing I would say, first of all, I'm not disputing this theory in any bit, because I do believe that this is also a viable theory, because we really don't know what happened in that house that night. I will say that, normally, if there's a house invasion, there are signs of said house invasion. But there was no signs within the house that pointed towards anyone entering or leaving the house that wasn't already permitted to go into the house. Because, so, not to mention there wasn't signs of a struggle within the house, so Kurt didn't fight back against whoever it was who was hurting him. Either because he was already high, or because the person who entered the house was someone he trusted.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is so, like, how many times has someone ever we see it, especially in these shows, where, like, these TV shows where somebody, it tried to break into the house, or it's someone that, like, the person is very aware of. That's, like in this case again, where Kurt knew, hey, someone tried to break into the house, and I feel.
I want to point out.
Let me
go
finish.
ahead. Sorry.
Okay, let me finish. And
go ahead,
again, this might be somebody that Kurt knew, right? Maybe very distant, but still somewhat new. And so, where I'm getting at with this is the possibility that there would not have been signs of a struggle if done in a manner that would not have arose to it, or if that person took care of things. You would not have seen, like, at that point, if someone has already been made, Like, if I was in somebody's case, breaking into a house of a celebrity like this, and I know I'm already made, the next time, like, that person knows it's me, right? They know, like, hey, or even like, in the strangest, weird, like, cold case scenarios, sometimes it is someone who and you would never suspect, so you'd open the door, with open arms for that person, not knowing that, hey, you're the person who tried to break into my house and you're here to kill me, right? Like, that's what I'm getting at, is like, the third option is, again, like, someone could have broken into the house, whether it was someone he knew or someone that knew who he was and not necessarily the other way around. And, as far as it goes with, like, the theory of, like, okay, he was high, or, this and, obviously was high, I would bring it plausibly to the table and say that person could have shot him up with Kurt's own supplies, got rid of the evidence, that has that person's DNA, and just walked off clean.
I want to say that your theory, what you're saying right now, lines perfectly up with what I'm trying to say about Dylan Carlson. Because Carlson had access to the house, clearly, because he's the one who let Tom Grant in to see it on April 7th, 2 days after Kurt killed himself. I just think they clearly knew each other. Carlson knew where Cobain's supply was in order to do it, so again, I still think Carlson had something to do with the murder. Or Cobain's death, because officially this case is solved as a suicide, but the conspiracy and the controversy surrounding the case is kind of hard to dispute. We will, until someone in the Seattle Police Force figures out a way to get the pictures and the crime scene evidence from Seattle Police Department and give it to a independent investigator or investigative team, we don't actually know what actually happened in that house.
I'll be very openly honest when I say this, and I think a lot of people would agree with me when I say this. That evidence is never going to see the light of day. Like, you would have to file probably a Freedom of Information request. You'd have to go through all sorts of, like, red tape just to probably get a glimpse at it. That's just my personal belief. Like, there, it's one of the things.
It's basically.
It's one
basically
of the
what you're doing.
Go ahead. Sorry.
You're basically emphasizing the fact that we will never really know what happened to Kurt Cobain and the night that he died. All we know is what investigators and what people have said about it. So currently, Kurt is survived by his daughter, Frances Bean Cobain, who currently owns Frances, however, got a little bit of revenge on Courtney because Frances disowned Courtney to a point where Frances currently owns, I believe, half of her father's estate. And Courtney owns pretty much none of it, from what I heard. Courtney's money currently is basically what she's living off of the remainder of what the money she got from Kurt's estate, combined with the money she's made as a actress and as the lead singer and front woman of her band. So sure. Frances is currently sole proprietor of one of the sole proprietors of Cobain's estate. She basically owns all the rights to Cobain's music and his appearance. So any new Nirvana that you hear is basically because of her approval. Any songs or any form of Nirvana release from the point that she got ownership, from that point on to now, that is all Frances, and Courtney is no longer involved with that.
So I can actually give some insight to this, Francis would not have all the say on the Kurt Cobain side when it comes
Clearly,
to...
I mean, yes, but the fact of the matter is, Courtney no longer has. The fact of the matter is, Courtney is no longer involved with Kurt's estate.
Yes.
Francis
Yes.
basically owns the majority of his estate.
Yes. The reason why I say she would not have the only is it depends on what record label.
Sub Pop Records. Up in I believe it's Sub Pop Records, which is up in Seattle area. They were the
What was it called?
Sub Pop Records. They were the record company that released Nevermind in 1991.
Okay.
I believe they released In Utero in 93 as well.
Okay.
I cannot confirm that though.
Well, so the reason I bring this up is so, like, especially if you're looking at Nirvana, there again, this is just me saying this. Again, I am pretty sure. So what she controls is only the publicity rights to her father's name and image, not the ability to do any sort of approval on writing or on new music that gets released. That stays with the parent companies of DGC and Sub Pop.
Right.
Which
okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Which
is why I have you on the podcast, because
and for those that don't know who the parent owners of Sub Pop and DGC are, Sub Pop is currently owned by Warner Music, and DGC is owned by Universal Music.
Bringing it full circle.
So, which is part of the reason why a lot of the members of Nirvana back in the like late 2000s, mid 2010s, and other years or later years of the 2010s had a huge dispute with Universal about the master tapes. What was, basically because if I remember correctly, there was a whole, and I'll try to find the specific thing about it, but essentially that is the thing is that just across the board, she only has the rights to her father's name and image, not like the other aspects of things. I'm trying to look a little bit into the whole thing with Nirvana when the Universal fire happened, because I remember their name got name dropped. It got dropped quite quickly. Okay, so looking at this, originally way back in the day, Nirvana said that like none of their stuff was affected, but it is very clear to some extent that some of their music was affected. Okay, yeah, then the masters to the song to the album Nevermind. Yeah, to the Nevermind album are basically destroyed. So, but that, yeah, essentially that's basically one of the things is like, I know we sort of went on a sidetrack here, but I wanted to clarify that because I certainly know they would not, she would not, okay,
well, thank you for clarifying that. I'm sorry I have to cut you off here, but it's getting pretty late, for me, so. Alright, so I want to ask, any closing thoughts on the case itself from any of you? Tony, anything you want to say? Like, what do you think? Was he murdered or was he did he commit suicide?
I think he was murdered rather than suicide. That's what I feel.
Alright. And who do you think did it?
That I personally can't say. I am leaning more towards what you think or who you think it is, but
Dylan
I still
Carlson.
can't. Yeah, I still can't say 100% for sure.
Alright, Mac, you?
Courtney
You
definitely
clearly
killed him.
Wow, I wasn't expecting you to come to that conclusion that fast, but okay. You mentioned earlier that you had a lot of knowledge about the case. I mean, so you knew. So, what was your opinion before I laid out the facts? Was it Courtney still killed him?
I still, yeah, I believed Courtney killed him before this, and I still believe that now. She's got the most amount of, motive, and she doesn't really have a clear enough alibi as to if she wasn't there or not. And, looking at the length of the gun and, everything about it, I just don't see who else it really could have been other than Carlson.
Alright, so we basically all come to the consensus that Kurt was murdered and that we will never really know the true answer behind it. Anyway.
Well, hold on. I didn't give my final judgment. God damn.
I thought the whole... Okay, go ahead. Give your final judgment.
My heart wants to say he took his own life. My gut, however, says that Courtney planned it but had Dylan do it.
Okay. So, yeah, we're all basically in agreement that Courtney and Dylan had some connection to his death.
Exactly.
In one way or another. Either directly or indirectly. But, yeah, he was murdered, Courtney did it, and Dylan had some part of it, so... I believe that's all the info, all the time we have for tonight. I want to thank everyone for taking... I want to thank everyone on the panel for coming in to do the podcast with me tonight. I know this was kind of out of the blue, but I wanted to say thank you to my guest, Mac Advertisement, who is host of the Nightwaves Music and Underground Music Podcast, which is hosted by Mac. Mac, you want to advertise that a little bit?
Not really much else to say other than currently on hiatus, but I do plan on ramping up production once the new year starts. I will hopefully have better equipment by then, and I will get episodes churning out more regularly. I will definitely get on that once a month schedule.
And I'm going to be assisting him with that because I'm going to be in a much better place to be able to help you. Tony, you want to say anything about you? Anything that, self-advertisement, self-promotion, whatever you gotta do?
Did that save anything?
I just want to go ahead and just say, follow me on Twitch at 9626, and I'll be streaming, I believe, both Christmas Eve into Christmas Day. I'll be doing a full day stream, and then I'll probably be doing another one on New Year's.
I'll probably be joining you on that stream if you don't mind. Because, I mean, I'm off Christmas. I'll be off Christmas Eve night, so I'll happily join you if family plans don't interfere with that. So.
Okay.
And last but not least, Taze, would you like to self-advertise before we go?
Yeah, I mean, I recently launched a podcast a couple months ago called Talk of the Town, where I talk about
The town.
Well, no, actually, it's a podcast where I just talk about media, the creator space, entertainment, startups, all sorts of other stuff.
Were you doing a Twitter space yesterday?
I was doing a Twitter space yesterday, yes.
That's what I thought. I just saw yeah.
Yeah, it was a Twitter space I did. It was sort of a half and half Twitter space. But and live episode of the podcast, but I did that for a couple of hours with some good friends and such. Additionally, when it comes down to it, I'm still running my esports team and doing content and stuff. So that's a pretty great thing to still be at it, I guess. My esports team will be celebrating 10 years in March, which makes me feel old, but other than that, I
Still,
started
congratulations for that.
Oh, absolutely. 11 years of running of doing content and 10 years of running an esports team. It's certainly, I'm surprised, I'm 22 and I'm surprised I don't have gray hair. So,
you want the job that gives you gray hair, go be the president.
Honestly, I think I could handle being president of the United States.
Good luck.
I'm gonna say this.
You have my support.
Okay, I'm gonna say this only because I could do this. Or only because I can really say this. I genuinely believe if anyone at this point could run the country, it's a 22-year-old kid who got diagnosed with autism. That's it. I mean, other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything cool that I have planned. That and hopefully looking forward to doing a lot of concerts next year. I missed out on some concerts this year.
Same. I went to go see Dragon Force back in March, but I'm hoping you go to Metallica in August.
I missed my first Starset concert in 6 years, in 5-6 years.
I missed the opportunity to see Starset. I think it's just part of the discussion for another time. We're supposed to be ending the episode.
Yeah.
Please, yeah.
But other than that, if you want to follow me on social media, or at least find me, my Twitter, for as long as Twitter may still exist, and it's the same with it's the same on YouTube, Instagram, and some other places, but also just again, you can find my link in bio through my Twitter. But my Twitter is @TaZeTheGod. So.
Alright, so thank you very much to my special guest. I, again, am Callon. I'm the host of Callon's Table of Contents as well as this show. I do not know if we will be coming back next year for any other episodes. We may do like a once a month live stream episode, depending.
I'm gonna tell you this: if this man doesn't come back with with this show, I'm going to just literally Anito Montoya style stalk this man for the rest of his life.
Yay, new friend!
just release a bunch of stray cats into your neighborhood, and Callon goes, "Kitty."
Exactly. I would adopt all of them if I could. Anyways, so yeah, I'm gonna work on Welcome to the Nightfall. I also am working on a more fiction-oriented true crime podcast called The Nightfall Files, which is kind of a spin-off where we have stories that are based on either based on fact or based on fiction, and we have a panel of guests listening and to try to guess which stories are factual and which stories are fake. So look for that next year. Obviously, all four of us are currently working on a podcast called The Satellite, which should be premiering hopefully this coming spring, depending on how things go. I got other projects I'm currently working on as well. One of which is with Taze called Unearthed, which more info on that will be released hopefully within the next year. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Welcome to the Nightfall. We will hopefully be back next year, and as we say adieu. Thank you guys for coming on.
Alright.
Alright.
Yeah.
Alright. Bye, y'all.